I am Jason. I'm 32 years old, and my family tried to sacrifice me for the sake of their golden child's ambitious fiancé. Before I tell you about the moment I wiped the smug smiles off their faces in front of 100 of their most important friends, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. It's good to know I'm not alone. The air in the grand ballroom was thick with the scent of expensive flowers and quiet ambition. It was my brother Alex's engagement party. 100 people, all dressed in their best, murmured approvals, their glasses clinking like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. On a large screen behind the stage, a slideshow of Alex and his fiancée, Qley, played on a loop, perfect smiles, exotic vacations, a life curated for an audience. I was standing near the back, a ghost at the feast, just as they wanted. Then Alex, my older brother, the golden one, stepped up to the microphone. He was beaming, his arm wrapped possessively around Qley's waist. "Thank you all for coming," he said, his voice smooth as polished marble. "And now I'd like to invite my little brother Jason to say a few words. Come on up, Jay. Don't be shy." A ripple of polite applause. Every eye in the room turned to me. It was a power play, and we both knew it. He wanted to display me, the quiet, nerdy programmer, as a backdrop to his own dazzling success. I saw Qley whisper something in his ear, a sly, triumphant smile playing on her lips. I walked toward the stage, my heart a steady, cold drum against my ribs. I felt the weight of their expectations, the familiar script they wanted me to follow. Say something awkward, be the lovable, bumbling brother, then fade back into the wallpaper. But tonight, the script was changing. I reached the microphone and looked out at the sea of faces. I saw my parents in the front row, their smiles tight with a mixture of pride for Alex and mild embarrassment for me. I saw Qley, looking at me with an expression of amused condescension. I didn't say what they expected. Instead, I took a small remote from my pocket. Before I say a few words about the happy couple, I began, my voice clear and calm. I want to share a little project Qley has been so interested in lately. I pressed a button. The romantic slideshow vanished. In its place, a video file appeared on the giant screen. The smiles in the front row froze. Qley's face, which had been glowing with victory, turned to a mask of pure, cold horror. Alex's jaw went slack. My father started to rise from his chair, his face turning a dark, angry red. The room fell silent. The only sound was the opening seconds of the video I was about to play. This wasn't just a toast. It was a reckoning. And to understand how we got here, you have to go back a few weeks to a dinner that felt like every other dinner of my life until it wasn't. The dinner where it all began. It was a Sunday evening, the kind my mother, Eleanor, insisted on. Family dinner. It sounded warm, but for me it had always been a command performance. I was the supporting actor, and the star of the show was always Alex. Tonight, he had brought his new, serious girlfriend, Qley, for what felt like a formal inspection. I should have known it would be different this time. Worse, Qley wasn't just another one of Alex's flashy dates. She had a certain sharpness in her eyes, a predatory stillness. She worked at a high-powered venture capital fund, and she wore her ambition like a designer coat. We were sitting around the polished mahogany table my parents were so proud of. The conversation, as always, orbited around Alex. His latest real estate deal, his new car, his upcoming trip to Aspen. I was picking at my roasted chicken, trying to remain invisible. Then Qley turned her laser focus on me. "So, Alex tells me you're a programmer, Jason?" she asked. The way she said programmer made it sound like termite inspector. "I'm a data scientist," I corrected gently. "I run my own dash." She cut me off with a tinkling laugh. "Oh, that's adorable. You have your own little spreadsheet company. It's just so sweet that you have a hobby that pays the bills." The table erupted in laughter. Not mean, cruel laughter, but something worse. The dismissive, patronizing kind. My brother Alex draped an arm over her shoulder, beaming. "She's a firecracker, isn't she?" My mother chimed in, her voice dripping with false concern. "Jason, dear, we just worry. That world is so unstable. Not like Alex's work." solid, tangible. My father, Richard, cleared his throat, a signal that a verdict was coming. Your brother builds things, Jason. He deals with people with real assets. You sit in a dark room and type. We just want you to have a secure future. Every word was a carefully placed stone, building a wall around me. The message was clear. You are less. You are not one of us. I looked at Qley. She was watching me, a smug little smile on her face. She was testing me, seeing how far she could push the family's designated punching bag. And my family was letting her. They were enjoying the show. The final blow came when I tried to explain what I actually did. I've been developing a forensic accounting AI, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's designed to detect sophisticated financial fraud. Qley waved a dismissive hand. Oh, honey, leave that to the big players. My firm is actually looking to acquire a small AI company right now. Real professionals. They have a brilliant algorithm that's going to change the game. She looked me up and down. It's a bit out of your league. That was it. The final, condescending pat on the head. My brother snickered. My parents nodded in agreement. I put my fork and knife down on my plate. The metallic clink unnaturally loud in the sudden silence. I didn't say a word. I just looked at her, at all of them, and let the silence hang in the air. My father broke it. Jason, don't be rude, he hissed across the table. Stop making the family look bad. Stop making them look bad. Not stand up for yourself. Not that's enough. My role was to absorb the hits and protect the family's pristine image. I picked up my fork again, but I didn't eat. I just sat there, a ghost at my own family table, the taste of ashes in my mouth. And in that moment, something inside me, something that had been dormant for years, began to wake up. Driving home that night, the city lights blurred into long, hazy streaks through my windshield. The laughter from the dinner table echoed in my ears, a phantom chorus that had been singing the same tune for 30 years. It wasn't just Qley. She was just the newest voice in a choir of dismissal. My mind drifted back. I was 10 years old, standing proudly in the living room next to my science fair project. A miniature volcano, meticulously crafted, ready to erupt with baking soda and vinegar. I'd won first place, but no one was looking. They were all gathered around Alex, who had just announced he'd made the junior varsity basketball team. My blue ribbons sat on the coffee table, unnoticed. Then came high school graduation. I was the valedictorian. I had a speech prepared about chasing dreams and the future of technology. I delivered it to a half-empty auditorium because my parents and relatives had to leave early. Why? Alex had a major soccer game that afternoon, a preseason friendly. I found them later, celebrating his one goal as if he'd won the World Cup. My valedictorian plaque ended up in a box in the garage. It was a pattern, a system. Alex was the sun. I was the planet in a distant, cold orbit, occasionally acknowledged but never truly seen. My passion for computers was a quirk. My quiet nature was a social deficiency. My achievements were nice, dear. Alex's slightest successes were cause for champagne and praise. The most painful memory, the one that still felt like an open wound, was from 5 years ago. I had the foundation of my AI Aurelia analytics. It was just a concept then, but a powerful one. I needed a small seed investment, just $20,000, to get the server space and software licenses to build a working prototype. I wrote a whole business plan. I practiced my pitch. I presented it to my father in his study. He listened with a pained expression, as if I were describing a terminal illness. Jason, I can't, he said, shaking his head. It's too risky. This computer fantasy. You need a real job, with a real salary. 2 weeks later, he bought Alex a brand new BMW as a congratulations for being named Salesman of the Month at his real estate agency. $20,000 would have been a rounding error on that car. I remember asking my mom why. Your father and we put a lot of money into Alex's college fund and getting him started, she explained, as if it were the most logical thing in the world. His career path is a sure thing. We have to be smart with our investments. You understand. I did understand. I wasn't a smart investment. I was the charity case, the one you hoped would just figure it out on his own so he wouldn't be a drain on the family's resources or its reputation. I never asked them for a penny again. I worked 2 jobs, coded through the nights, and built my computer fantasy on my own, fueled by coffee and a quiet, burning anger. That night, after Qley's performance, I realized nothing had changed. In their eyes, I was still the little boy with the science fair project, waiting for an applause that would never come. They had no idea what I'd built in the silence they had relegated me to. And as I pulled into my driveway, a cold, hard thought crystallized in my mind. Maybe it was time I showed them. I didn't go home. Couldn't. The silence of my apartment would have been deafening. Instead, I drove to the small, unassuming office building where I rented a couple of rooms, the official headquarters of Aurelia Analytics. It was really just a glorified workspace for me and my co-founder, Ben. I found him exactly where I expected to, hunched over a keyboard, bathed in the glow of 3 monitors, a half-empty pizza box next to him. Ben had been my best friend since college. He was the only person on the planet who saw me not as Alex's weird brother, but as a partner, peer. He looked up as I walked in, his eyes immediately registering the storm on my face. "Whoa," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Let me guess. Sunday dinner." I slumped into the other chair, the cheap leather groaning in protest. I didn't even have to say much. I just gave him the highlights. Qley's condescending remarks, my family's gleeful participation, my father's final, cutting command. Ben listened patiently, his expression hardening with every word. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. He spun his chair to face his monitor, typed a few commands, and pulled up a file. "You know," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "while you were getting verbally assaulted over pot roast, I was on a call with the M&A team from Sterling Westwood. Sterling Westwood, the massive tech conglomerate that was in the final stages of acquiring us. The deal was so secret that not even my own family knew the name of my company, let alone the fact that it was about to make us both very, very wealthy. And," I asked, my own problems momentarily forgotten. Ben swiveled back to me, a fierce grin on his face. "And their head of acquisitions, a guy named Harrison, called you, not the company you specifically, the single most valuable asset in this entire deal. He said your brain is the reason they're paying 8 figures. He wants you to lead their new AI division after the merger." The words hung in the air, a stark contrast to the echoes of my family's ridicule. "A hobby that pays the bills. A little spreadsheet company. Out of your league. They don't know, man," Ben said, his voice softening. "They have no idea who you are." "They don't want to know," I said, the bitterness rising in my throat again. "They have the version of me they're comfortable with. The failure. It makes Alex look better." Ben nodded. "So what are you going to do about it?" The question was simple, but the answer felt monumental. For years I had done nothing. I had absorbed it. I had accepted my role. But sitting there, in the quiet hum of the servers that held my life's work, I felt a shift. It was the why. Why did I work so hard? Why did I sacrifice sleep and a social life for years? It wasn't just to build something. It was to prove something. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. It was an email. The subject line was festive, adorned with digital confetti. "You're invited. Alex and Qley's engagement party." I opened it. It was a lavish, formal invitation. A celebration of the union that had, just hours before, tried to casually break my spirit. They were inviting me back into the fold, expecting me to show up, smile, and play my part. It was a test, a demand for my surrender. Ben watched me read it. "You're not actually going, are you?" I looked from the screen to Ben, and a slow, cold smile spread across my face. "Oh, I'm going," I said. I wouldn't miss it for the world. For 2 days I stared at that digital invitation. It sat in my inbox like a ticking bomb. Part of me, the part that had been conditioned for years, wanted to just delete it, send a polite, "So sorry, can't make it," and retreat back into the safety of my work. It would be easier. It would be quieter. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Qley's smug smile. I heard my father's hiss. Stop making the family look bad. This wasn't just an invitation. It was a summons. They were telling me, without words, to come back and get in line. To accept the new queen of the family and my place at the bottom of the pecking order. My refusal would be seen as petulance. My attendance as submission. I was about to archive the email for the 10th time when a new one popped up. It was from an anonymous, encrypted address. The kind of thing that immediately sets off alarm bells. The subject line was just 3 letters, VCF. VCF. Venture Capital Fund. Qley's World. My heart started beating a little faster. Against my better judgment, I opened it. The message was short, cryptic. Be careful. VCF isn't buying. They're stealing. They're trying to reverse engineer the algorithm of their AI acquisition target. The director leading it thinks the founder is some small-time chump they can roll over. Don't be that chump. I stared at the words, a cold dread washing over me. There were dozens of AI companies VCF could be targeting. Could be a coincidence. Could be a wrong number, a mistaken identity. But it wasn't. My mind flashed back to the dinner. My firm is actually looking to acquire a small AI company right now, Qley had said. They have a brilliant algorithm. Then, the probing questions disguised as condescending jabs. The way she'd pressed for details about my work. It wasn't just mockery. It was reconnaissance. She wasn't just trying to put me in my place. She was sizing up the competition. No, not the competition. The target. The anonymous email was a warning shot. A flare in the dark. Someone on the inside knew what was happening. Someone was trying to warn me. My hands started to shake. Not with fear, but with a sudden, incandescent rage. She had sat at my parents' table, accepted their hospitality, laughed in my face, and all the while, she was planning to gut my company and steal my life's work. The sheer, unmitigated arrogance of it was breathtaking. And my family had handed her the knife. They had presented me on a silver platter. The family fool, the harmless nerd whose little hobby wasn't worth a second thought. Her greatest advantage was their perception of me. She was counting on me being the person they all thought I was. Weak, non-confrontational, easily dismissed. I stood up and started pacing my office. The pieces were clicking into place with horrifying clarity. This was bigger than a family insult. This was corporate espionage. This was theft. And Qley was at the center of it. I pulled the engagement party invitation back up on my screen. My decision was no longer complicated. It was simple, necessary. I clicked RSVP. Attending, 1. The game had changed. They thought they were inviting a guest. But I was coming as an auditor. And I was going to conduct a full forensic analysis of their lies. The anonymous tip was the spark. Now I needed proof. I spent the next 48 hours in a state of hyper-focused intensity. Ben and I turned our office into a war room. We lived on coffee and the grim satisfaction of the hunt. I started where any data scientist would, with the data. I began a deep dive into our server access logs. Aurelia's core algorithm was protected by layers of security, but we had a sandbox demo version that we provided to potential investors under strict NDAs. Sterling Westwood had accessed it, of course. Their activity was clean, professional. They respected the boundaries. Then I found another set of access credentials. The ones we had issued to VCF. Qley's fund. The logs told a story. Their initial access was normal. Standard queries. But over the last week, the activity had become aggressive. They weren't just testing the software's capabilities anymore. They were hammering its walls, looking for cracks. There were repeated attempts to access the source code directory, all of them blocked by our firewalls. They were trying to look under the hood. It was the digital equivalent of trying to pick a lock. It was damning, but it was circumstantial. I needed more. My mind went back to the dinner again, replaying every word. Qley's questions hadn't just been general. She'd asked about the specific programming language I used for the neural network. She'd inquired about my data processing framework. At the time, I dismissed it as idle, ignorant chatter. Now I saw it for what it was, a fishing expedition. She was trying to get me to give up the blueprints for free. Then a darker thought occurred to me. How did Qley even know enough about my project to target me in the first place? I was pathologically private about my work. Only a handful of people knew what I was really building. Ben, a few trusted contractors, and my heart sank. And my family. I had tried to explain my work to them over the years. In my foolish, optimistic moments, I had shared my progress, hoping for a glimmer of interest or pride. I remembered a conversation a few months ago at a family barbecue. I was talking to my cousin, David. David was always the good cousin, the one who seemed to take an interest. I told him about a major breakthrough I'd had with the AI's predictive modeling. Alex had wandered over, a beer in his hand, and overheard us. "Still tinkering with that robot brain of yours, Jay?" he joked. "You should get a real hobby, like golf." David had defended me. "No, man, this is really cool stuff. Jason's building something big." At the time, I'd been grateful for David's support, but now a sickening suspicion began to form. Alex had heard, and Alex talked to Qley. I needed to confirm it. I pulled up our network traffic analysis tools. I started cross-referencing the IP addresses that had been running the attacks on our server. Most were masked behind VPNs, but a few of the earlier, sloppier attempts weren't. They traced back to a residential IP address. I ran a lookup. The result felt like a punch to the gut. The address was registered to David, my cousin, the one who had always seemed to be in my corner. He hadn't just been listening at that barbecue. He had been gathering information, and he had passed it on. The betrayal was so profound it left me breathless. This wasn't just Qley. This was a family affair. I called David immediately. No preamble, no small talk. "Why, David?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Jason? What are you talking about?" He sounded genuinely confused, and for a second I almost doubted myself. "The IP address, David. The one that's been trying to breach my company's servers for the past week. It's yours." The silence that followed was heavy with guilt. I could hear his sharp intake of breath. He was caught. I don't know what you mean," he stammered. But the lie was paper thin. "Cut the crap," I snapped, my patience gone. "Did you tell them? Did you tell Alex and Qley about my project?" He finally broke. His voice was a pathetic whisper. I just mentioned it to Alex. I thought it was cool what you were doing. I was bragging about you." "Bragging?" I laughed. A harsh, humorless sound. "You gave them the keys to the kingdom, David. You told them just enough for them to find me, to target me." "I didn't know she was going to do this," he pleaded. "I swear, Jason. Alex just said Qley's company was interested in tech stuff and I mentioned your startup. I had no idea. But I knew that was a lie too." David was smart. He worked in finance. He knew exactly what interested in tech stuff meant when it came from a VC shark like Qley. He hadn't done it to help me. He'd done it to ingratiate himself with Alex, the successful branch of the family tree. He had sold my secret for a few pats on the back from the golden boy. He had chosen a side. "It doesn't matter what you knew," I said, my voice turning to ice. "It only matters what you did." I could hear him starting to panic. "Please, Jason, don't tell your parents. Or Alex. It was a mistake. A mistake. Betraying years of trust was a mistake. Helping a predator target his own family was a mistake. The casualness of it, the cowardice, was almost worse than the act itself. He wasn't sorry for what he did. He was sorry he got caught. He was worried about the consequences for himself, not for me. He was worried about getting a lawyer. "Don't worry, David," I said, and the coldness in my own voice surprised me. "I'm not going to tell anyone." "Oh, thank God, Jason. Thank Dash. I'm going to show them," I interrupted. "All of them." I hung up the phone before he could respond, leaving him to stew in the silence of his own treachery. The confirmation of David's betrayal was the final piece of the puzzle. It severed the last thread of doubt, the last wisp of hope that this was all a misunderstanding. This was a coordinated attack, and my own family, my own blood, had been complicit. I turned to Ben, my face set like stone. They're trying to steal it all. Ben's expression was grim. So we fight back. No, I said, a new, chilling sense of clarity washing over me. We don't fight back. We let them think they're winning. We're going to set a trap. A beautiful, elegant, inescapable trap. And the engagement party. That's where we're going to spring it. My decision was made. I was no longer just defending my company. I was defending my life, my identity, my very existence against the people who were supposed to have my back. I was going to that party, and I was going to burn their whole counterfeit world to the ground. The plan was audacious. It was theatrical, and it had to be perfect. For the next week, Ben and I worked with the precision of surgeons. We weren't just programmers anymore. We were architects of a downfall. The core of the trap was a piece of code I wrote myself. We called it the honeypot. We created a new, isolated section of our demo server. It was designed to look like a vulnerability, a backdoor into the Holy of Holies, the source code for Aurelia's algorithm. It was an irresistible bait for a thief who thought she was smarter than everyone else. But the honeypot had a secret. The moment anyone accessed it, it would trigger a silent alarm on our end. More importantly, it would begin to record everything. Keystrokes, screen activity, and, the master stroke, it would activate the microphone on the user's computer. We would not only see what they were trying to steal, we would hear them planning it. It was legally questionable, but then again, so was corporate espionage. We were just gathering evidence. Are you sure about this? Ben asked, looking at the elegant, vicious lines of code. This is playing dirty. They started the game, Ben, I replied, my eyes not leaving the screen. I'm just going to win it. We baited the hook by sending a system update email to all demo users, mentioning a temporary relaxation of certain security protocols for maintenance. It was just enough to make a curious attacker pounce. Then we planned the reveal. My first thought was to just send the evidence to Sterling Westwood and let them handle it. But that wasn't enough. A quiet, corporate execution wouldn't fix the root problem. It wouldn't lance the wound my family had inflicted. This had to be public. It had to be undeniable. That's when a crucial piece of information landed in my lap. Ben was on a final logistics call with Mr. Harrison, the CEO of Sterling Westwood. As they were wrapping up, Harrison mentioned his weekend plans. I have to fly out for an engagement party, he'd said with a slight sigh. My old partner's daughter is getting married. A fellow named Richard Miller. Ben almost dropped the phone. He relayed the news to me, his eyes wide. Jason, you're not going to believe this. Harrison is going to be there. At the party. It was a staggering coincidence. A gift from the universe. My accuser, my judge, and my greatest champion would all be in the same room. The man who called me his most valuable asset would be there to witness Qley's treachery firsthand. The stage wasn't just set. It was now filled with an all-star cast. The final piece was the delivery mechanism. I needed a way to play the evidence for the whole room to see. I called the event coordinator for the party, a woman named Isabel, pretending to be from Alex's office. I told her I was preparing a surprise tribute video for the happy couple and needed to ensure my laptop could connect to the main projector. She happily gave me the technical specs. Everything was in place. The trap was set. The audience was confirmed. The stage was waiting. All I had to do was wait for the mouse to take the cheese. The night before the party, a wave of doubt washed over me. The weight of what I was about to do felt immense. This wasn't just a corporate takedown. It was a declaration of war on my own family. It was an act from which there was no return. I found myself scrolling through my contacts and stopping on a name I hadn't called in years. Dr. Anya Sharma. She had been my graduate school advisor, a brilliant and kind woman who saw the potential in me when I was just a nervous kid full of ideas. She was more of a mentor than my own father had ever been. I dialed her number, half expecting her not to answer, but she picked up on the second ring. Jason Miller, she said, her voice as warm and sharp as I remembered. To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure? I didn't know where to begin, so I just started talking. I told her everything. The years of being overshadowed, the dinner, Qley's scheme, the betrayal, the trap I had set. I laid it all out, the whole ugly, tangled mess. She listened without interruption. When I finally finished, the line was silent for a long time. I thought maybe I had shocked her, or that she would think I was being vengeful and petty. "That is quite a burden to carry, Jason," she said finally, her voice full of empathy. "And quite a plan you have constructed. It is both brilliant and terrifying. I don't know if I can go through with it," I confessed, the words tasting like failure. "It feels destructive." "It is destructive," she agreed. "But sometimes you have to burn down a forest that is sick to allow new things to grow. Let me ask you one question, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. What is your goal here? Is it revenge? Or is it liberation?" The question cut through all my anger and confusion. Revenge. The word felt hot and satisfying. I wanted them to feel the same humiliation I had felt. I wanted to see the look on Qley's face when her world came crashing down. But then I thought about what came after. The shouting, the accusations, the inevitable, messy fallout. And what would I have? A brief moment of victory, followed by a lifetime of broken relationships and bitterness. Liberation. That felt different. Felt like peace. It was about telling the truth, not for the purpose of hurting them, but for the purpose of setting myself free. Free from their expectations. Free from the role they had cast me in. Free from the weight of their approval, which I now realized I had been chasing my entire life. "Liberation," I answered, my voice quiet but certain. "I just want to be free." "Then your path is clear," Dr. Sharma said. "Don't act out of anger. Act out of truth. Present the facts calmly and clearly. Your goal is not to destroy them, but to reclaim your own narrative. The consequences of their actions are for them to deal with. Your only responsibility is to your own integrity." We talked for a little while longer, but those words were what I needed. She had given me a compass. I wasn't going to the party as an avenger. I was going as a truth-teller. I was going to state my case, present my evidence, and walk away, leaving the wreckage behind for those who had created it. I hung up the phone, a profound sense of calm settling over me. The doubt was gone. In its place was a quiet, unshakable resolve. I knew what I had to do. I arrived at the engagement party fashionably late. I had chosen my suit with care, a classic, well-tailored navy blue. It wasn't flashy, but it was confident. I wanted to look like I belonged, not like the charity case they always treated me as. As I walked in, the room was already buzzing. I saw my parents holding court, laughing with some people I didn't recognize. They saw me, and my mother gave a tight little wave, her eyes already scanning the room for someone more important to talk to. It didn't take long for the happy couple to find me. Alex swaggered over, a glass of champagne in his hand, Qley attached to his arm like a designer accessory. "There he is," Alex boomed, clapping me on the shoulder a little too hard. "Glad you could make it, little brother. For a second there, I thought you might be too busy with your, you know." He waved his hand vaguely, as if trying to grasp the concept of my job out of thin air. Qley smiled, a venomously sweet expression. "We were just talking about you, Jason. I was telling Alex how impressed I am with your dedication. It's so rare to see someone so passionate about their little projects." The bait was obvious. They wanted a reaction. They wanted me to get flustered, to defend myself, to play my part in their little drama. But Dr. Sharma's words echoed in my head. Act out of truth, not anger. So I smiled back. Calm, genuine smile. "Thanks, Qley. It means a lot. In fact, my little project is about to have a very big week. I can't wait to see what the future holds." My response seemed to throw them off. It wasn't what they were expecting. Qley's eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second before her perfect smile snapped back into place. Just then, a man with a shock of silver hair and an aura of quiet authority approached our group. My heart gave a little leap. It was Mr. Harrison. My father hurried over, his face stretched in a sycophantic grin. "Harrison, so glad you could make it. You know my son, Alex, of course. And this is his brilliant fiancée, Qley." Harrison shook their hands politely. His eyes then landed on me. He paused, a flicker of recognition in his gaze. He knew my face from our video calls. I saw the question form in his mind. "And this is our other son, Jason," my father said, almost as an afterthought. Harrison's eyebrows shot up. He extended his hand to me, his grip firm and warm. "Jason, it's a pleasure to finally meet you in person. We are all incredibly excited about the work you've been doing." A confused silence fell over my family. Alex looked from Harrison to me, a frown creasing his brow. Qley's smile tightened at the edges. My father looked utterly bewildered. "You two know each other?" my father asked. "In a manner of speaking," Harrison said smoothly, his eyes twinkling. "Jason is a bit of a legend in our R&D department." Before anyone could process this, Qley, ever the opportunist, jumped in. "Oh, Jason is just full of surprises," she said with a light laugh, trying to reclaim control of the situation. She turned to me, her voice dripping with false admiration. "I hope one day your company gets noticed by a big fund like mine. You just have to keep dreaming, right?" That was the line. The final, arrogant jab. The perfect cue. I gave her a serene smile. "You know, Qley," I said, my voice just loud enough for our little group to hear, "I think you're going to be very interested in what happens next." On the stage, the MC was tapping the microphone. It was time for the toasts. It was time for the show to begin. Alex, basking in the spotlight, gave a short, self-congratulatory speech. He thanked everyone, praised Qley effusively, and then, with a smug grin, he called me to the stage. It was the moment he'd been waiting for, the public affirmation of our family hierarchy. I walked up, the small remote feeling cool and solid in my hand. I adjusted the microphone. The room was quiet, expectant. "Thank you, Alex," I began. "I don't have a long speech prepared. I've always believed that actions speak louder than words. And lately, I've been made aware of some very interesting actions." I looked directly at Qley. Her smile was starting to look strained. Qley, in particular, has shown a remarkable interest in the world of forensic accounting AI. She's been so curious about my little project. So I thought, instead of a toast, I'd share a little bit of that project with all of you. I pressed the button. The screen behind me flickered to life. It wasn't a PowerPoint presentation. It was a screen recording. The date and timestamp were in the corner, 2 nights ago. The user was logged into VCF's network. The mouse was moving frantically, trying to open firewalled directories. My honeypot, a collective gasp went through the room. In the front row, my mother put a hand to her mouth. My father was half out of his seat, his face a thundercloud. Then came the audio. It was Qley's voice, sharp and unmistakable. "Come on, find the core algorithm." Her voice echoed through the ballroom sound system. "We just need the source code and we can build our own clone. By the time we launch, the little accounting nerd who built this will never know what hit him." The room was utterly silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the thick carpet. Qley's face was as white as a sheet. She looked like she had been turned to stone. Alex stared at the screen, then at her, his expression a mixture of confusion and horror. The video continued. It showed her directing a small team trying to bypass my security. It recorded her frustration, her greed, her absolute contempt for the anonymous founder she was trying to rob. When the video ended, I let the final, damning sentence hang in the silent air. Then I turned back to the microphone. "The little accounting nerd she's referring to, that's me," I said, my voice ringing with a clarity I had never felt before. "The company she was trying to steal from, Aurelia Analytics, is my company." I paused, letting that sink in. I looked at Mr. Harrison, who was watching the scene unfold with a grim, unreadable expression. "And there's one more thing," I said, turning my gaze back to Qley. "You said you were looking to acquire a brilliant AI company. You were right. Sterling Westwood, Mr. Harrison's company, finalized that acquisition this morning. As of tomorrow, Aurelia Analytics will become their new AI division. And as part of that deal, I've accepted a new role." I let the tension build, my eyes locked on hers. "I'll be heading up that division. So, in a way, you were right, Qley. Your fund is very interested in my work. Because as of tomorrow morning, I'm your boss's boss. The finality of the statement hit the room like a physical blow. Qley swayed on her feet, her hand gripping Alex's arm for support. He shook her off, his face a mask of disgust and humiliation. My parents looked like they had seen a ghost. Mr. Harrison stood up. He didn't say a word. He just looked at me and gave a single, decisive nod. It was all the confirmation anyone needed. The verdict was in. The case was closed. This was the moment that changed everything, the moment I finally took back control of my life. Thank you for sticking with me this far. You guys are amazing. Do me a favor and hit that like button, and drop a 1 in the comments below, just so I know you were here with me. It doesn't just help more people find this story. It lets me know that my experience means something to someone else. Your support is the biggest reason I have the courage to keep sharing the rest of this journey. The party imploded. It didn't end. It shattered. People started murmuring, casting shocked glances at Qley and my family, and then began quietly slipping away. They didn't want to be associated with the fallout. Qley stood frozen for another 10 seconds before she turned and fled, pushing past stunned guests. Alex didn't follow her. He just stood there, his face pale, looking at me with a dawning horror, as if seeing me for the first time. He wasn't looking at his failure of a brother. He was looking at the man who had just publicly detonated his perfectly curated life. Mr. Harrison made his way through the dispersing crowd and came directly to me. He shook my hand again, this time with a new level of respect in his eyes. That was unorthodox, he said, a wry smile playing on his lips, but effective. You did the right thing, Jason. Integrity is the one asset you can't put a price on. He glanced over at a woman with a severe haircut who was speaking quietly but intensely into her phone. That's Ms. Vance, Qley's managing director. I imagine Qley will be hearing from her lawyer before she hears from HR. We at Sterling Westwood don't do business with thieves. He gave me a final nod and left, leaving a trail of quiet authority in his wake. Ms. Vance gave me a curt, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement before she too turned and walked out. The message was clear. Qley was finished. The staff began clearing tables around the few remaining guests. My family was huddled together, a small island of misery in the cavernous room. Carol, my manipulative aunt, was whispering furiously to my mother. My cousin David was trying to make himself invisible in a corner, looking physically ill. I ignored them all. I walked over to the open bar, poured myself a glass of water, and drank it slowly. I felt calm. Empty, but calm. The storm had passed, and I was still standing. Alex finally unfroze and staggered over to me, his eyes wild with desperation. Why? He choked out. Why would you do this, Jason? You ruined everything. We were going to be a family. We were never a family, Alex, I said, my voice devoid of heat. We were a cast of characters in a play, and I was tired of my role. Qley didn't ruin this. You did. You all did. You let her mock me, you belittled me, you dismissed me. You thought I was nothing. You just learned I'm not. He stared at me, speechless. For the first time in his life, my golden boy brother had no witty comeback, no charming deflection. He had nothing. He had built his life on a foundation of superiority over me, and that foundation had just turned to dust. I placed my empty glass on the bar, turned my back on him, and walked out of the ballroom without looking back. I almost made it to my car. They caught me in the parking garage, a desperate, broken little delegation. My father, my mother, and Alex. Jason, wait! My father called out, his voice hoarse. I stopped but didn't turn around. I just waited. You can't just walk away, my mother said, her voice trembling with a fury that was quickly replacing her shock. You have embarrassed this family in a way I never thought possible. You humiliated your brother. You destroyed his future. I finally turned to face them. The garage lights cast long, distorted shadows. They looked small and frail under the buzzing fluorescence. My future was the one on the line, I said, my voice level. Qley was going to steal my work. Did you hear that part? Or were you too focused on the social embarrassment? She was ambitious, my father spat. Maybe she went too far, but you handled this with no class. You aired our dirty laundry in public. It stopped being our laundry the moment you chose her over me, I replied. It stopped being our laundry every time you praised him for breathing and criticized me for succeeding. You didn't want a son. You wanted a reflection of yourselves. And when I wasn't that, you tried to break me. Alex stepped forward. A divorce would have been less messy than this, Jason. You could have just told me. I laughed. A real, actual laugh. Told you? Told the man who laughed the loudest when his fiancée called my life's work adorable? You wouldn't have listened. You never listen. You just wait for your turn to speak. A heavy silence fell between us. In that moment I saw the truth. They weren't sorry. They weren't horrified by the betrayal or the theft. They were horrified that I had revealed the truth. They were angry that I had upset the delicate balance of their world. A world built on the convenient fiction of my mediocrity. I'm done, I said quietly, but the words carried the weight of a final judgment. I'm done being your disappointment. I'm done being your stepping stone. I'm done needing your approval. My mother started to cry, but they were tears of frustration, not remorse. What about us? After all we've done for you, what you've done is teach me a valuable lesson, I said, looking each of them in the eye. That sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you get to keep. Goodbye. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I saw them standing there, 3 shrinking figures in the harsh light of the parking garage. I didn't feel anger or sadness anymore. I just felt free. For the first time in my life, I was driving toward a future that was entirely my own. 6 months can feel like a lifetime. The world didn't stop turning after the infamous engagement party. But mine was reborn. The merger with Sterling Westwood went through smoothly. My new title was Vice President of the AI Innovation Division. It sounded absurdly corporate, but the work was everything I had dreamed of. I had resources. I had a team of brilliant minds who challenged and respected me. I had a boss, Mr. Harrison, who treated me as a partner. We weren't just detecting fraud anymore. We were building predictive models to prevent financial crises, creating tools that could genuinely help people. My little project was changing the world in its own small way. The transition wasn't just professional. It was personal. The quiet, reserved Jason who avoided confrontation began to fade. In his place was a man who spoke with confidence in boardrooms, who wasn't afraid to voice his opinion, who trusted his own judgment. The ghost from the family dinners was finally gone. I reconnected with old friends, the ones I had neglected during the years I spent coding in isolation. I started dating again, cautiously at first, but with a new understanding of what a healthy relationship looked like. It wasn't about power dynamics or social standing. It was about mutual respect. It was a revelation. My family, for the most part, was silent. I heard through the grapevine that the fallout had been catastrophic. Alex and Qley's breakup was immediate and ugly. He had tried to salvage his reputation, but the story had spread like wildfire through their social circles. He was no longer the golden boy. He was the fool who had been played by his fiancée and publicly dismantled by his own brother. He lost clients. He lost his swagger. He lost the only thing that ever mattered to him, his image. I didn't revel in it. Honestly, I rarely thought about them at all. It was like a background noise that had finally been switched off. The silence was peaceful. One afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press the green button. Hello, Jason? It's Mrs. Gable. I was stunned. Mrs. Gable had been our neighbor for years. A sweet, quiet widow who was a longtime friend of my mother's. I'd always liked her. Mrs. Gable, hi. It's so good to hear your voice, I said, genuinely surprised. Oh, dear. I'm sorry to bother you at work, she said. I was at that party, Jason. And I wanted to tell you, I have been waiting 30 years for someone to finally stand up to them. I always knew you were the special one. The quiet ones always are. I am so terribly proud of you. Tears pricked my eyes. To be seen, truly seen, by someone who had been there all along. It meant more than any promotion or paycheck. It was a validation that came from a place of pure, simple kindness. "Thank you, Mrs. Gable," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "That means the world to me." We chatted for a few minutes more. Before she hung up, she said something that stayed with me. "Your mother and father, they bet on the wrong horse, Jason. And now they're learning that a pedigreed horse that can't run is just an expensive mouth to feed." It was a harsh analogy, but a true one. They had invested everything, emotionally, socially, and as I would soon find out, financially, in a son who was all style and no substance. And the bill was finally coming due. Another month passed. I was in my office, sketching out a roadmap for a new project, when my assistant buzzed me. "Jason, your mother is on the line. She says it's an emergency." My blood ran cold. For all my newfound freedom, the word emergency from a parent still triggers a primal fear. Was someone sick? Had there been an accident? I grabbed the phone. "Mom? What's wrong? Is everyone okay?" It wasn't that kind of emergency. It was the kind I should have expected. "Jason, you have to help your brother," she said, her voice tight with a desperate, manufactured panic. There was no hello. No how are you. Just a demand. I leaned back in my chair, a weary sense of resignation washing over me. "Help him with what? His life is falling apart," she cried. "He lost his job. His clients won't return his calls. Qley suing him for emotional distress or some nonsense. He's a mess. He needs you." I stayed silent, letting her words hang in the air. The sheer audacity of it was almost impressive. After everything that had happened, she was still calling me to fix the mess her golden child had made. "What exactly do you expect me to do, Mom?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "You're successful now," she said, as if it were an accusation. "You have money. You have connections. You could, I don't know, give him a loan. Introduce him to some people. Help him get back on his feet." "He's your brother." "He is my brother," I agreed. "And he stood by and laughed while his fiancée planned to destroy me. He called me a failure his entire life. You want me to reward that behavior?" Her voice turned sharp, the desperation morphing back into her familiar, cutting tone. "This is your fault, you know. If you hadn't made that disgusting scene, none of this would have happened. You did this to him." And there it was, the blame, the complete refusal to accept any responsibility. "No," I said, my voice firm. "I didn't do this. His choices did this. Qley's choices did this. And your choices did this." "Our choices," she shrieked. "We gave you everything." Then, in her anger and frustration, she let the final, ugly truth slip out. The one that explained everything. "We invested everything in Alex. Your father and I, we put our savings into his real estate ventures. We thought he was the sure thing. Now it's all gone. The inheritance, everything, it's all gone. And you're sitting up there in your fancy office doing nothing. The inheritance." The word landed in the space between us like a block of ice. It had never been about love. It had never been about which son they were more proud of. It had been about money. It was a financial calculation. Alex was the high-yield, high-risk stock. I was the forgotten savings bond, earning negligible interest in a dusty drawer. Their entire family structure, their praise, their disappointment, it was all just portfolio management. And their prize investment had just crashed. I felt a strange sense of pity for them. They were so blinded by image and money that they had completely missed the real value of their own family. "I see," I said softly. "Well, that certainly explains a lot. Are you going to help us or not?" she demanded. "I can't give you money," I said, "but I will give you some advice. I have the number of an excellent financial advisor. He specializes in bankruptcy and debt management. I'll email it to you." The stunned silence on the other end of the line was more satisfying than any shouting match could ever have been. "That is all you can do?" she whispered, her voice full of disbelief. "That is all I am willing to do," I corrected her. My help is no longer on the table. My wallet is closed. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up the phone. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I felt the last final chain break. I was free. A few weeks later, I was sitting at a small outdoor cafe. Not in my bustling American city, but in Florence, Italy. The sun was warm on my face, and the air smelled of espresso and old stone. In front of me was a half-eaten pastry and a view of the Duomo, its magnificent dome piercing the brilliant blue sky. I had booked a one-way ticket. After that final call with my mother, I realized I needed more than just a new job and a new apartment. I needed a new perspective. I had spent so long fighting a battle in a world they had defined. It was time to see the rest of the world on my own terms. I had enough money now. I had a job that I could do remotely for a few months. There were no more excuses, no more family obligations holding me back. For the first time in my life, there was just me. I took a sip of my cappuccino and watched the people go by. Couples holding hands, families laughing, artists sketching in the piazza. It was a world away from the tension and drama that had defined my life for so long. Here, I wasn't Alex's brother or the programmer. I was just a man enjoying a coffee in the sun. I thought about my family, but the memory was distant now, like a scene from a movie I'd once seen. I hoped, in a detached way, that they would find some kind of peace. I hoped Alex would learn that his value wasn't tied to his job or his car. I hoped my parents would learn that love isn't an investment to be managed. But their journey was their own. It was no longer my burden to carry. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Ben. A picture of our team celebrating a new product launch. They were all smiling, raising glasses of champagne in our old office. The subject was simple. Wish you were here. I smiled and typed back a reply. Me too. But the gelato here is better. I pulled a postcard from my bag, a beautiful photograph of the Ponte Vecchio. I started to write, not to my family but to Ben. I didn't talk about work or the merger. I told him about the taste of the pasta, the color of the sunset over the Arno River, the feeling of walking through streets that were centuries old. I was finally free, not because I had won or because they had lost. I was free because I had finally stopped playing their game. I had walked off the board and discovered that a whole world was waiting for me. A world that didn't require me to be small for someone else to feel big. A world where I could just be Jason. And for the first time, that felt like more than enough. I signed the postcard, put a stamp on it, and went to find the nearest mailbox, my steps feeling lighter than they had in years. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. It took a long time for me to find my own voice, and sharing this is a part of that journey. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to completely redefine your relationship with the people you love? Share your story in the comments below. I read every one. And please, don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.